The first time I saw his ghost, I was still awake. It was the first night of 2025, a night meant for new beginnings, clean pages, quiet promises. But mine began with a flicker. The candle on my desk trembled, spilling gold across the glass. Outside, the city exhaled a tired kind of silence. You know that stillness after midnight, when the world seems to pause just long enough for your memories to walk back in? That's where I was, caught between forgetting and remembering. Then the phone lit up. A single vibration. A name I hadn't seen in years. Reminders of him. At first, I thought it was a glitch. It wasn't an app I recognized. It wasn't even a message. Just those 3 words, glowing like an unfinished sentence. My breath caught. Because sometimes all it takes is one phrase to reopen a life. Do you ever feel that? When something so small, a song, a smell, a color, pulls you back to a moment you swore you buried? You stand there, completely still, pretending you can control what rises next. But you can't. The past is impatient when it wants to be seen. I stared at the screen until the candle burned lower. The air smelled of wax and salt. His scent, somehow still here. Every cell in my body whispered, "Don't look," and every other begged, "Please, just once more." Because the truth is, we're never haunted by people. We're haunted by the versions of ourselves that love them. My name is Eleanor Vale, 47, teacher, widow of a man who never officially belonged to me. I spend my days explaining literature to young people who believe tragedy only happens in fiction. And at night I read stories that remind me it's always the same plot. We love, we lose, we learn to breathe again. Only this time, the story came looking for me. He's been gone 3 years, a sudden, merciless winter that froze everything I was. People said time would fix it. But time is a polite liar. It dulls the edges, never the depth. Grief hides. It doesn't die. Have you ever tried to convince yourself that you've moved on, only to hear their favorite song in a cafe? And suddenly the air tastes like the year you met. That's what this notification felt like. A melody I didn't choose, playing again. I closed my eyes, and there he was, laughing the way he used to, the low kind of laugh that fills a room without asking permission. My heart recognized it before my mind did. I whispered, "You're not supposed to be here." But maybe I was wrong. Maybe he never left. There's a strange intimacy in the things that remain. The chipped mug he used every morning, the indentation on the pillow that refuses to fade, the way my hands still fold towels the way he taught me. Do you ever notice that? How love leaves fingerprints that refuse to wash away? You move apartments, change numbers, even rename your heart. But something always finds you. I tell my students that literature survives because humans crave mirrors. Tonight, the mirror stared back. I saw myself, a woman both whole and unfinished, holding a phone like a relic. The candlelight softened my reflection, and for a heartbeat, I saw 2 silhouettes, mine and his, overlapping like memories trying to belong to the same body. The robe I wore was his gift, satin, pale blue, too soft to forget. It brushed against my skin like a memory that refused to fade. I pulled it tighter, the way I used to pull him closer when words failed. The screen dimmed, then brightened again. Another vibration. My pulse answered before I did. Reminders of him. Not once, twice. And then the message changed. If you're reading this, it means I still exist somewhere inside you. I froze. It couldn't be real. But what if reality was never the point? What if grief was simply love that changed its address? Have you ever kept something that hurts to touch? A shirt, a photo, a voice note, because deleting it would feel like erasing a part of yourself? I used to call that weakness. Now, I think it's devotion in disguise. Because to remember someone is to keep them alive in the only way we can. And maybe that's what the haunting truly is. Not punishment, but persistence. I sat back, watching the candle dance. The wax had melted into the shape of a small heart, cracked through the middle. Of course it had. The universe is theatrical when it wants to be understood. I felt the urge to speak, not to him, but to whoever might be listening. If you've ever been haunted by someone you loved, stay. The words escaped like breath. If you've ever walked into a room and smelled a memory, if you've ever found their laughter hiding in someone else's voice, then you'll understand what's happening to me. Because this isn't just my story. It's every woman's story who ever loved deeply enough to leave a trace in time. So stay with me. Breathe with me. Let the ghosts show you what they really are. Unfinished prayers, disguised as pain. I promise this haunting doesn't end in fear. It ends in light. The candle steadied. The phone pulsed one last time, and a faint shimmer crossed the screen, like handwriting made of air. I leaned closer, and there it was, written in that same familiar slant. I never stopped remembering you. The ink seemed wet. I reached out, but the moment I touched it, the words dissolved into light. A soft hum filled the room. My heart caught the rhythm, slow, steady, alive. Then, just before the flame curved blue again, a new line appeared beneath the first. Reminders of him. Activated. I didn't know it yet, but that single phrase would unravel everything I thought I'd healed. And by the end of that year, I would learn that being haunted isn't the same as being lost. Sometimes, it's the soul's way of finding the parts we abandoned in love. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear, but because the air itself felt different. Charged, alive, listening. Every sound seemed amplified. The refrigerator's hum, the tick of the clock, the whisper of rain against the window. It was as if the house had grown ears. By dawn, I'd convinced myself it was exhaustion. But when the light entered the room, the candle was still burning, steady, untouched. A full white pool of wax, yet the flame hadn't moved. How long can something burn without being consumed? I told myself it didn't matter. People imagine things after midnight. But as I poured coffee, the phone buzzed again. Reminders of him. One new memory available. There was no app to open, no file to click, only the words. And beneath them, a timestamp, 7 years ago, today. Do you ever notice how your body reacts before your mind catches up? A tightening behind the ribs, a sudden chill in your hands, a heartbeat that feels slightly out of rhythm. Like music remembering a verse it never finished. That's what happened. Before I even looked, I knew it would lead me somewhere I wasn't ready to go. I followed it anyway. The notification took me to my photo gallery, to an image I didn't remember saving. A beach, dusk-colored, horizon blurred by mist. In the center, a man walking ahead, his back to the camera, footprints swallowed by the tide. And there, in the corner, my shadow reaching toward him. It was us, our last trip. The one we never called goodbye. I felt the same breeze brush my neck, the same silent stretch between two hearts that loved too much to speak. I had deleted that folder the day after the funeral. And yet here it was, reborn, intact, waiting. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, pretending to function. The kettle whistled, students' papers piled on my desk, emails blinked. But beneath everything, a low hum persisted, like the frequency of his name vibrating under each ordinary sound. At exactly 3:33 p.m., the lights flickered, just once, and then my classroom speakers turned on by themselves, releasing 3 piano notes, the opening bars of the song he used to play when I wrote beside him, clair de lune, soft, slow, infinite. No one else heard it. No one else was there. But I swear I felt his hand brush my shoulder in rhythm with the music. I sat down, heart pounding, not from fear, but from recognition. The haunting had a melody now. That evening, I returned home to find the candle had relit itself. The air smelled of rain and sea salt, and lying on the kitchen table where I'd left nothing was a single feather, white with a golden tip. I laughed, a small, nervous sound. The universe had a sense of humor, apparently. I used to teach my students that symbols are how the soul speaks when words fall short. Maybe this was language, one I'd forgotten how to read. I picked up the feather, and for an instant, I heard him say, "You always looked for signs. I just learned to send them." That night, I couldn't resist writing to him. Not in the phone, not online, just in my old paper journal, the one with the torn blue cover. I wrote, "If this is real, if this is you, give me something undeniable. Something that doesn't live in my imagination." Then I blew out the candle, leaving the room in darkness. For a moment, nothing moved. Then, the scent of his cologne drifted past, followed by the faintest vibration on the phone I'd placed face down. I didn't touch it. Some part of me knew. Answers lose power when chased. So I waited. Let the unknown breathe. The following morning, the city felt altered. Crisper, too vivid. Colors had edges. Time had texture. Everywhere I looked, patterns aligned in quiet orchestration. The barista at the cafe handed me my drink and said, "Your usual, double espresso with honey," even though I'd never ordered it that way. That was his drink. She smiled, confused, as if the words weren't hers. And when I sat at my table, the song playing overhead was Clair de Lune. Do you ever feel reality rearranging itself around you? Like the world is conspiring to prove a point you don't want to understand. That's how it starts. First with coincidences, then with patterns, then with surrender. That night, I dreamed. I was standing in an endless corridor lined with mirrors. Each reflection was a different version of me. Some younger, some older, all carrying the same expression, a mix of longing and recognition. At the end of the corridor, a door glowed blue. On it, written in silver, the words, "Reminders of Him." I reached for the handle. It turned on its own. A gust of warm air met me, filled with the smell of salt and smoke and something achingly familiar. Then his voice, "You called me, Eleanor." I woke gasping, hand stretched toward the ceiling, fingers still warm. The candle beside the bed was burning again, and on my phone, one unread message. Dreams are letters written in another language. No sender, no number, just those words. Days blurred, reality thinned. Sometimes I'd hear the creak of the door at dawn, like someone walking through quietly, not to wake me. Sometimes the windows would fog from the inside, forming faint words that dissolved before I could read them. And once, only once, I caught my own reflection whispering back my name. It should have terrified me, but it didn't, because beneath the strangeness, something peaceful moved, like recognition wrapped in mystery. I began to think maybe hauntings aren't interruptions. Maybe they're invitations to remember, to reconcile, to translate love back into light. I started collecting the signs, every feather, every flicker, every coincidence. My desk soon looked like a shrine I hadn't meant to build, a candle that never died, a stack of his letters I couldn't throw away, and the phone that now carried a heartbeat of its own. At 11:11 each night, the same notification appeared. Reminders of Him. One new entry. But there was never anything to open. Only a mirror reflection on the black screen. Mine, always waiting. I began to talk to it. Softly, quietly, like prayer. And sometimes the light would pulse once in answer. Do you believe in communication that doesn't use words? In moments when you just know something beyond logic is reaching for you? I used to laugh at people who said that. Now I just listen. Because every time I ignore the signs, the world grows louder until I can't. A book I hadn't touched in years fell from the shelf that night. When it hit the floor, a folded paper slipped from its pages, yellowed, thin, addressed to no one. Inside, in his handwriting, "If you find this, it means I'm still trying to reach you." I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I held the paper against my chest and whispered, "Then keep talking." That was when I realized something had changed. The haunting no longer felt external. It felt like a pulse inside my own voice, echoing back. Maybe it was never him chasing me. Maybe it was me learning to listen to the part of myself that still believed in forever. Outside, thunder rolled across the horizon. The lights flickered again, and for a split second, the words appeared on the wall, traced in light, as if written by invisible hands. "Open the blue door." I don't remember standing. I just remember moving. The old wooden door at the end of the hall, the one that led to the attic, was painted blue. I'd never noticed it until now. As I reached for the knob, the air thickened, carrying the scent of the sea. And in the distance, faint and familiar, the sound of Clair de Lune. The house changed temperature as soon as my hand touched the blue door. Not colder exactly, emptier, as if someone had taken a slow breath in and never let it out. The knob resisted, a fraction of an inch, then yielded with a tired groan. A draft slid through the hall, grazing my neck with fingers that didn't belong to this world. Somewhere below, a pipe knocked like an old heart, and above me, the attic exhaled dust and the memory of rain. Do you ever feel a threshold before you cross it? Like the air has rules on one side and a different, older grammar on the other? I stepped through, and the floor answered, wood complaining, nails remembering. The smell arrived first. Cedar left too long in silence, paper that had swallowed decades, a thread of ocean even though the sea was miles away. The light bulb at the top of the stairs blinked 3 times. I counted each flash without meaning to. 1, 2, 3. Then darkness again. My fingers slid along the railing, gathering a thin coat of dust, cool as ash. Halfway up, Clair de Lune found me, so faint I might have been inventing it. 3 notes, left to wander a staircase they'd never climbed in life. "Say my name," the house seemed to say. I didn't, not out loud. At the landing, the blue door met a second blue door, its twin, smaller, warped by summers and grief. I pushed. It didn't move. I pushed again, gentler, and felt the stuck breath of old paint surrender. The attic opened like a held note breaking. The candle in my hand, which I could have sworn I'd left downstairs, burned steady, blue at the root, gold at the lip. Shadows lengthened in obedience. The attic was not empty. Nothing is ever empty. Boxes lined the eaves in careful rows. A coat once mine and never mine hung from a nail like a memory still trying to keep warm. A mirror leaned against a beam, refusing to reflect the present. It offered me a version of myself 2 seconds behind, enough to doubt what was real. And on an old trunk near the single slanted window, a letter, blue paper, edges softened by time, corners curled toward themselves as if in prayer. I didn't move at first. Some silences are sacred, and some are warnings. I couldn't tell which one this was. The candle hummed. My spine answered with a slow, unavoidable shiver. "Don't be theatrical," I whispered to a room that had staged worse dramas. But fear is patient, and love is worse. It waits longer. I crossed the room. Every step felt like stepping onto a memory still alive enough to bruise. The letter rested in the center of the trunk without dust beneath it. Something had placed it there recently. Something that did not believe in dust. I could see his handwriting from a foot away. The tilt to the right, the soft insistence of the capital E, as though he'd always known my name would live at the beginning of every sentence. My breath slowed. The candle steadied as if it were listening. On the envelope, Eleanor. No stamp, no address. Only my name and a date in the corner, January 3rd, 2018. He died in 2022. The attic held its breath with me. What do you do when time forgets its manners and arrives out of order? When a door opens and returns something you were not brave enough to keep? I touched the paper. Warm. Impossible. The way a rock feels warm in the sun long after the light has left it. My fingers fought the seal. It didn't tear so much as sigh. Inside, one page, written on both sides. Ink a blue I recognized from the night we said goodbye, when he'd signed his name and left the pen on my desk, as if that could count as a promise. I read the first line. If this finds you, I couldn't. The candle lowered itself a fraction, as if bowing. Say it, the attic insisted. I refused to answer a room. Another line. Do you remember the corridor of mirrors we couldn't walk through at the gallery? You laughed, but I saw your hands shake. I've decided the future feels exactly like that. Every version of us waiting, none of them wrong, some of them too late. I knew the gallery. I knew the mirrors. I knew the shake. I had hidden it inside my sleeve while he watched the shape of my mouth, trying not to confess. I kept reading. This is not a letter about what we were. You've saved too many of those already in places you won't admit. This is a letter about what I owe you. I owe you a truth. You never haunted me. I haunted you. With the song I left everywhere. With the cup I didn't take. With the apology I kept postponing because I wanted to hand it to you in person, not over a wire, not over a prayer. The floorboard behind me answered a footstep that didn't exist. I didn't turn. If I am wrong about time, tear this open years from now and forgive me then. If I am wrong about distance, open it next summer on the beach where the heart was supposed to heal. If I am wrong about courage, mine, not yours, open it in an attic that smells like cedar and old rain. I don't know where it will wait, only that it will. Stop, I said to the page. It didn't. Reminders of him. You always liked phrases that sounded like instructions. If you kept this one, it's because your bones recognized it before your mind did. I am not asking you to remember me. I am asking you to remember the part of you that loved without bargaining. If I ever made a religion out of us, it was the altar I built in secret, the one made of your laughter when you were not performing, the way your hands went quiet when you wrote. The window bled a thin line of dusk into the room. Dust drifted like language abandoning grammar. I read the next line standing very still, as if stillness could slow the facts. I will not survive long enough to deliver this in the correct tense. The world narrowed to a point the size of a candle's core. A sound lived just outside the walls. Water against stone. A tide that existed only for me. I don't know how much longer I have. I don't know if it's a year, or 4, or an hour. What I know is that the only afterlife I believe in is the one love makes inside the person who stays. If you're reading this, then I am there. Not as a ghost. As a frequency you once tuned to without trying. The mirror caught the flame and reached for it. In my reflection, I wasn't alone. For a breath, there were 2 of me. The woman holding the letter, and the woman who never had to. You told me once that forgiveness was a room with windows on every wall. I didn't understand. I thought forgiveness was a key. Maybe it's a candle, always lit, burning down different shapes depending on the night. If the candle keeps burning in your house when it shouldn't, that's because I asked whatever listens to let the flame stand guard until you are ready. I looked at the candle. It did not flicker. Blue at the root, gold at the lip. A small sun refusing to move. The letter shook in my hands. The paper had a heartbeat. Mine, stolen. His, loaned. If the door to the attic opens, it is because you are strong enough to read this. If the blue paper finds your fingers, it is because all the versions of us have voted and chosen this one, where you stay, read, breathe, forgive. I am not asking you to come back to me. I am asking you to come back to you. There was a stain near the margin. Salt. The truth has taste. I swallowed it. Listen carefully. I did not leave you. I left the time we were killing. I wanted to be braver. I wanted to hold the version of me you deserved. I failed more quietly than I should have. For this, I have to make amends the only way left to me. I will spend my after loving you from the inside. When the song plays, when the feather falls, when the power flickers at 3:33, know that I am there learning how to be the light instead of the wound. The attic stepped closer, invisible. Something like a hand settled on my shoulder, and then thought better of it. I let the room decide the distance. Open the blue door when you're ready to let go of the story where I hurt you by leaving last. Open it when you can admit that staying angry is a way of keeping me. Open it when you can love me without the requirement of my body. Open it when you want the light more than the proof. My mouth formed his name. No sound. Eleanor, if you can read this, then I was right about the only thing that mattered. Love continues as instruction. It teaches the hands it once held how to hold the air. If you need a sign, I will send 3. If you need 3, I will send 9. If you need a year, I will take a year from whatever I have left in the God of you. The last lines were smaller, as if he'd been writing against time. I am not your ghost. I am your reminder. Remember me differently. A. The signature was a single initial. He always signed the letters he couldn't bear to finish. A drop of ink had fallen beside it, dried in the shape of a crescent moon. I pressed my thumb to it. Ink does not warm skin. This did. Behind me, the mirror corrected itself. Now only one of me stood there, alive, shaking, lit from within by a candle that should have burned out days ago. Say something, the attic insisted. I folded the letter carefully, twice, then once more, as if it were a map I could carry in the smallest pocket. Okay, I told the room. Okay. The window rattled softly. Rain had found us. It slid down the pane in lines like unwritten sentences. I placed the letter back on the trunk, then changed my mind and kept it in my hand. Some things are not to be set down again. On the inside of the envelope flap, a second line revealed itself when the candle leaned close. If you need me, ask the blue light. I turned. Across the attic, a faint glow pulsed near the far eave. Small, patient, the color of an answer I already knew. I crossed to it, every board remembering where my weight had been years ago, every nail forgiving me for leaving. The glow lived inside a small tin box, navy paint chipped to constellations. I opened it. Inside, a key the color of midnight, a strip of ribbon I'd worn in my hair the summer we believed in forever, and a tiny glass vial filled with sand the exact shade of dusk from the beach we never called goodbye. Underneath, folded once and tucked flat, a receipt from a shop that no longer existed. On the back, his handwriting again. When you can't find me, light the blue candle and listen for the low notes. I will come as the memory you don't have to be brave for. The house creaked in agreement no human throat could imitate. From somewhere below, the front door latch clicked and unclicked as if someone were practicing entrances. I climbed down from the attic, the letter in my hand, the box against my heart. At the blue door, I waited. Something waited with me. On the hall table, the phone hummed once. I flipped it over. No number, no app, only the words, reminders of him. 3 new entries. 3, I whispered, because of course, he'd promised 3. The first entry arrived as sound, Claire de Lune, not from speakers, not from any visible source, humming through the bones of the house like a lullaby taught to wood. The second entry arrived as light. The candle in the living room leapt taller, casting a circle on the wall that wasn't a circle at all but a shape. 2 hands releasing something they'd held too long. The third entry arrived as touch, a warm pressure at the hollow of my throat, the place where words begin, then gone. Enough, I told the air, not because I wanted it to stop, but because I needed to prove I could ask. The candle obeyed, returning to its steady blue-gold breath. The music softened into the idea of music. The touch left me unafraid. Down the hall, I passed the mirror that keeps its own time. It showed me the woman I was becoming, shoulders squared toward the light, fingers stained the faintest blue. In the kitchen, a feather waited on the table. This one was dark, almost black, with a silver edge, night trimmed in moon. I placed it beside the first white feather with its gold tip. 2 halves of a wing, or 2 choices learning to fly in the same direction. Do you ever feel a house forgive you? The refrigerator hummed like a friend clearing its throat before speaking. The clock decided to keep time again. I unfolded the letter and read the last 4 words out loud, because some words must be spoken to be true. Remember me differently, I said, and the lights did not flicker. They steadied. I lit the blue candle with the match I didn't remember carrying back from the attic. The flame caught quickly, eager, like a name said correctly after too long. On the phone screen, a final line appeared beneath the entries, thin as breath. Reminders of him, listening. I stood very still. If you've ever stood in the exact place where your life changes temperature, you know the posture. Body forward, heart unarmed, light finding you instead of the other way around. Then listen, I said, voice low enough to be mistaken for a prayer. I'm ready to learn the version where you don't disappear when I forgive you. I'm ready to learn the version where I don't disappear when I forgive myself. Somewhere far off, thunder turned in its sleep. Somewhere nearer, a drawer slid open a fraction, as if led by a hand that wasn't done making amends. On the letter, ink I hadn't noticed lifted, brightened, resolved into a final postscript that had been invisible until the exact temperature of the room made it speak. When the light is ready, you will be too. I folded the page and held it against my chest the way you hold new vows and old truths. The blue door behind me clicked without closing. Not an ending. A hinge. The house took its first real breath since he died. And somewhere inside that breath, so quiet I nearly missed it, I heard the last thing I needed to. My own voice, returning to me unbroken. I slept with the blue candle lit, though I told myself I wouldn't. Sleep arrived like a tide that refused to knock. No waves, only the hush that comes when the ocean considers mercy. When the dream opened, I was already walking. The corridor of mirrors had returned, longer now, the glass panes breathing a soft condensation from the inside. Each reflection of me moved a fraction later than I did, as if time were apologizing for something it hadn't said yet. On the left, my younger self, mouth brave, eyes reckless with summer. On the right, the woman I am now, curated, careful, carrying a piece I haven't earned. Between them, versions that never learned how to finish a goodbye. Music threaded through the air, Claire de Lune reduced to its skeleton, 3 notes repeating, each one lower than the last, as if descending a staircase I could not see. In dreams, sound as a hand. It led me forward. "Look closer," a voice said, neither his nor mine, but the third voice that belongs to two people who once believed in the same future. I stepped toward the nearest mirror. My breath bloomed on the glass. Within it, a sentence formed and dissolved before I could read it. I lifted my hand. The hand on the other side did not lift. I watched me, waiting. "This is the room where stories change tense," the voice continued, amused, fond, patient. "Past learns to speak present. Present learns to forgive future. Don't hurry." I moved on. The mirrors narrowed until they pressed close to my shoulders, fabric whispering against cool edges. I felt the robe, his gift, pale blue, brush the glass like a wing too large for a hallway. Somewhere behind me, doors shut softly without latches. Ahead, the blue door glowed the way some words glow when you say them correctly for the first time. Before I reached it, the music shifted, adding a fourth note that felt like a breath after crying. The temperature dropped. The mirrors fogged at once, and dozens of messages appeared in the pearled haze, all at the same time. Too many to read, too tender to ignore. I tried to catch one. "Remember me differently." I had read those words before, in the attic, written by a man who died in the wrong year. Here, the mirror wrote them back in my own hand. I pressed my palm to the sentence, and the glass went warm. The mirror woman exhaled. So did I. The fog cleared and returned, like understanding learning its balance. "Come," the voice said. "Bring the note." I looked down. The letter was in my hand, blue paper, edges soft, one corner smudged with ink the shape of a crescent moon. I hadn't taken it to bed. Dreams don't ask permission for evidence. When I reached the blue door, it did not resist. It opened inward on a room I knew too well to have seen before. Floor of worn cedar, a window looking onto water that did not belong to my city, and the smell of rain braided with smoke and salt. On a table, a feather, dark with a silver edge, rested beside a white one painted with gold. Two halves making a grammar. "Say my name," the room asked, not as demand but as practice. I almost did. Instead, I whispered mine. "Eleanor." The effect was immediate. The candle on the table flared blue at the root, gold at the lip, and the room arranged itself around me the way a sentence rearranges around its subject. On the far wall, a mirror shaped like a doorway turned clear enough to mistake for open air. Water moved on the other side, a tide without a moon. He appeared there, not as body, but as temperature. A warmth at my back that aligned my breath with the music. The fourth note returned, then a fifth I had never heard him play. Hope, carefully tuned. "I'm not here to scare you," he said. "I'm here to finish what love started." I didn't turn around. In dreams, turning can break the spell. "I found your letter," I said to the mirror, to myself, to the sound of him. "It was waiting in the wrong year." "There are no wrong years," he answered gently. "Only rooms we haven't learned to enter." The mirror doorway changed. My reflection blurred into a coastline we once promised to visit again. The beach, where the sky can't decide if it belongs to day or night. Footprints appeared, two sets moving toward the water, one slightly ahead of the other. At the edge of the tide, the prints merged, one path becoming two again, a choice postponed. "Do you ever wonder," I asked, "if forgiveness starts before we admit we need it?" He laughed softly, that hum threaded into the candle flame. "Forgiveness is older than both of us. It's the language light uses when it talks to time." The music softened into a hush that lifted the hairs on my arms. I let my eyes close. When I opened them, the mirror had changed its mind. Instead of the beach, It showed the small kitchen of my apartment. A mug sat on the table, chipped at the rim where he always placed his thumb. Steam rose from it, though no one had set water to boil. My chair was turned out, inviting or accusing. It depends on the day. "Come in," I said, not sure whether I meant him, the past, or myself. The doorway did not open. I did. My chest unknotted in small, negotiable increments. The room darkened at the edges. Objects pressed forward. Things, not thoughts. The scarf he bought in winter to match my mouth. The pen he left when we thought permanence was something you could misplace. The book I pretended not to like because he loved it too easily. I wanted to touch everything. In dreams, touch is a vow. I reached for the pen. It warmed. I reached for the scarf. It smelled of cedar and him and air before a storm. I reached for the book. It opened to a page I'd underlined years ago. The pencil line faint and stubborn. We do not love to be safe from loss. We love to understand what we become when loss arrives. I exhaled. The line had not been there when I last held the book awake. Dreams annotate what waking refuses. "Are you real?" I asked, still not turning. "Does it matter?" He asked back, tender, not evasive. "What does your body say?" I realized my shoulders had dropped an inch. My mouth had relaxed. My heartbeat had chosen a slower song. "Alive," I said. "Good," he said. "Then you are in the only reality that counts." The blue candle hummed. The mirror doorway brightened, until it was not a mirror at all, but a window onto the exact night he died. The sky that color grief takes when it promises to be quick, and then isn't. I should have looked away. Instead, I let the scene approach. I saw the hospital room where I did not go. My name sat like a note unsung in the white noise. He lay there, not as the man I kept in memory, but as a body making a case for mercy. No sound, no dramatic monologue. Only the light in the corner flickering the way a candle does when a door is opened from the inside. My knees bent, unbidden. In dream language, that gesture means I'm listening. "Listen then," he said. "I did not leave you. I crossed. I didn't become an absence. I became a way through." A feather fell from the corner of the room across time. It drifted into the dream space between us, black with a silver edge, night disciplined by moon. It hovered in a slow circle, then rested on the blue letter in my hand. The ink crescent gleamed as if freshly breathed upon. "Teach me how," I said, childlike not because I had lost wisdom, but because I had found wonder. "Teach me how to carry you without turning myself into a grave." The fourth note returned, then the fifth, then silence large enough to be trusted. "Begin with the body," he said, gentle as a hand at the small of my back. "Where do you hold me?" "In my throat," I said without thinking. "In the pause before I say yes." "Then put light there," he said. "Call it by its name. Breath." I placed my hand at the hollow where words begin. The blue candle answered, a tendril of flame leaning forward as if to listen. Heat moved into my palm, into skin, into the fear that had turned to stone. The stone warmed, then softened, then remembered it had been water first. "Again," he said. I breathed. In. Out. With each inhale, memory. With each exhale, a little distance that did not feel like abandonment. It felt like space. The mirror window flickered, then showed me at my desk in the waking world, sleeping with my head turned toward the candle, mouth parted in a peace I had not authorized. The phone rested near my hand. On its black screen, 2 words glowed faint as a secret practicing courage. "Keep going." "I am," I whispered. "Not because I'm brave, but because staying still hurts worse." "Good," he said again, pride folded inside the word like a note in a pocket. Now come deeper." The room obeyed him. Walls thinned to veils, the floor became shore. Water arrived without sound, salt, warm, forgiving. I stood ankle-deep in a tide that belonged to no ocean I had met awake. The moon wore a blue halo. The horizon waited without insisting on a reason. "Step in," he said. "Trust that you will not drown in what you already survived." I walked forward until water leaned into my hips, into the place grief stores its oldest language. Fabric clung and then learned to float. The blue letter stayed dry in my hand, though the waves practiced touching it. "Why water?" I asked. "Because you tried to heal with fire and called it strength," he said. "Water is not weaker. It's simply patient." The tide lifted. I let it. When I looked down, there were 2 sets of footsteps leading into the water. The present and the memory walking the same shore at last. They did not merge this time. They traveled side by side, equal, neither rescuing the other. A wind rose, not the kind that pushes, but the kind that learns your breath and matches it. The blue halo widened, and the mirror doorway shifted again, revealing the attic with its cedar air and dust that refuses to settle. The trunk waited. The feathered grammar. The key, the color of midnight. "You can wake up now," he said, "but you'll have to bring this with you." "What?" "The knowledge that I am not outside you," he said. "I am the space you make when you forgive." I closed my eyes to keep the sentence intact. When I opened them, I was in my own bed, the candles still lit, the room still learning how to be morning. My hair was damp with salt. My throat was warm where my hand had been. On the pillow, a single grain of sand, the exact shade of that dusk sky ocean. The phone vibrated once, 3:33 a.m. A new notification pulsed without sound. Reminders of him. "Read the blue letter." I began, then stopped. The letter lay on the nightstand, folded precisely the way my dream hands had folded it. But when I opened it, the postscript I had memorized had expanded, the invisible ink now speaking in clear blue. "Bring the light to the room we were afraid of. Not the attic. The one with the mirror that always ran 2 seconds behind. The truth waits there, first thing, before the city remembers its noise." A hush moved across the apartment that sounded like permission. I stood, the robe settling against my knees, the floor cool and obedient. The mirror in the hallway brightened, only a fraction, as if shy. I carried the candle. The flame leaned forward, curious. At the mirror, my reflection took a breath just before I did, then matched me perfectly, as if time had decided to be kind. Words condensed on the glass, as if breathed there by a careful mouth. Not haunting. Crossing. I didn't cry. Not yet. I pressed my forehead to the glass and let the cool enter. My body remembered the water. My chest remembered the light. Then, soft, not on the mirror, not on the phone, but directly in the room, spoken the way music speaks when it forgets it's not a person. His voice. "You're ready." "For what?" I asked, smiling into the fear because sometimes that's the only way to be honest. "To find the message I hid in the last reminder," he said. "It isn't on your phone." "Where then?" "In the place where the candlelight becomes ink," he said. "You've seen it. You just called it shadow." The flame lifted. The wall beside the mirror darkened, then arranged itself into letters, blue on blue, as if the room had been writing to me for years and finally learned my alphabet. "Read the blue letter, Eleanor. The other side of the paper. Under the moon." I turned the page over. There was nothing, until the candle raised its gold to meet it. Lines coalesced, then deepened, a map arriving just in time. "Meet me where the water turns to light. Tonight." The city outside inhaled. the kind of breath a world takes when it knows someone has said yes to something that matters. Inside, the blue candle learned a new steadiness. The mirror did not lag. For the first morning since he died, Time and I were in the same room. I blew the candle out and did not feel the dark. It felt like a curtain raised. I left before the city could change its mind about night. Keys, letter, the small tin box with the midnight key, the 2 feathers, white with gold, dark with silver, wrapped in a scarf. The blue candle in a glass lantern, because I didn't trust the wind to be gentle. On my phone, one quiet pulse. Reminders of him. Meet me where the water turns to light. I drove without music. The road kept offering stations. I kept saying no. Silence spread thin across the highway like a veil someone had worn to a wedding and to a funeral. Traffic thinned. The city let go. Salt arrived in the air 5 miles before the ocean. I rolled the window down and let memory in. At the last curve, the horizon appeared. Black-blue, then not black at all, but breathing. The moon was wrong for this brightness. She shouldn't have had this much to give, and yet the edge where water met sky glowed a soft electric, like every plankton in the world had decided to awaken for one woman's courage. Do you know that instant when the body knows before the mind? My throat warmed, the place where words begin. My chest loosened. Behind the ribs, a door I had kept closed for 3 winters swung wide without creaking. I parked where we used to park, at the end of a lot where the pavement forgets it isn't sand. The lantern flame bent toward the sea as if it recognized its teacher. I stepped onto the beach. Cold bit first. Then the damp climbed the hem of the robe beneath my coat, reminding me that fabric remembers what skin tries to forget. The beach was empty except for everything we had not finished saying. Okay, I told the dark. Okay, I'm here. The next wave rolled in glimmering. Blue fire stitched into water, a seam ripper undoing night. Where the foam thinned, tiny constellations clung to the sand before winking out. The sea had learned to speak light. I set the lantern down and took the blue letter from my pocket. The wind worried the corner. I cupped it with both hands, my thumbs finding the crescent of dried ink like a small moon I could move. Under the moon. He'd written it. I raised the page to the sky. At first, nothing. Just paper and my breath and the sound of the ocean keeping a promise humans can't. Then, gradually, as if the page were learning to remember, letters surfaced, faint at the edges, deepening toward the center, ink arriving from the invisible. You made it. Thank you for bringing your body. I laughed. It came out wrong. Half sob, half disbelief. Of course, I said, to the page, to the sea, to the version of him that believed my body was the only altar that mattered, because it was the one that kept me alive. The next lines brightened. This is the shoreline where we discovered that silence was a language. I left you something here, not in the sand, in the way it glows. Step in. Let the water carry the weight I can't. I didn't argue. I tore the hem of stubborn logic at my ankles and stepped forward until the first wave climbed my shins and laced my skin with light. The cold burned, then it didn't. Every nerve learned a new word for awake. Are you here? I whispered. Wind answered first, ferrying sage and salt, and a note so low I felt it in my bones before I heard it. Claire de Lune, slowed, almost broken, but not. Then warmth, not against my hand, not on my cheek, but behind my sternum, a palm pressed from the inside. He didn't appear like a man. He arrived as pattern. Light translated into a shape the sea could sustain, shoulders, height, the precise tilt of a head that had memorized my yes. Where a face should have been, there was brightness. No features, only recognition made visible. I forgot my name. The body knows what to do when it's loved. It moves closer. The wave rose to my knees. My legs shook. Not fear. Release. An ache stored for years under the guise of competence loosened all at once, and I folded in the water, hands on wet sand, shoulders heaving. Sound ripped free. The sound reserved for births and endings, and the exact moment forgiveness finds a mouth. Sobs. Not pretty. Not poetic. Animal. Necessary. I cried for the hospital room I never entered. For his last winter and my first alone. For every apology I rehearsed out loud as if the air could carry it better than a letter. For the goodbyes we refused to name because we believed good stories deserved better final scenes than life offers. The sea listened. It has heard worse. The glowing foam braided through my fingers like threads I could hold, and then had to let go. When the worst of the storm finished leaving my mouth, I lifted my head. He stood where the wave broke, made of light and distance, and an intimacy that didn't require the ethics of a body. "You asked for undeniable," he said. The voice was not sound. It was the exact temperature of his hand on the back of my neck the night the power went out, and we discovered we could be the light. "You asked me to prove I wasn't your imagination, so I came in the only language neither of us can argue with." "Water," I said, laughing and shivering at once. "Light," he corrected, smiling in the way light smiles, with warmth, with space, with permission. I stood, salt making constellations on my shins. The lantern flame bowed, the robe clung, the letter waited. "Why did it take so long?" I asked, and I hated how childish I sounded even as the truth of it burned. "Because you were brave," he said. "You insisted on surviving without magic until your survival became a cage. You asked for the key when you were ready to use the door. And forgiveness? It was always in you," he said. "I was the excuse you needed to bring it out." The light shape stepped closer, not touching, but changing the temperature of the air between us. The wave rose with him. When it fell, the sand around my feet glowed brighter than the rest of the beach, as if I stood in a sentence that had waited years for its verb. "Read," he said. The page had more ink now, the moon cooperating, the water approving, the field opening its archives. "I did not leave to hurt you. I left because dying found me. And when it did, the only thing I could choose was where to stay in you. I chose the place where your voice begins. I chose the part of you that says yes to light. I placed my hand at my throat and felt warmth meet it from both sides. Outside, inside, like two hands learning they had always been one." Another line surfaced. "Please stop calling this haunting. Call it crossing. The bridge is yours." Tears again, but new ones. Quiet, rinsing, the kind that leave the face cleaner than they found it. I looked up. "Tell me it wasn't my fault," I said, "because wanting the truth is a holy thing even when you already know it." He brightened. No flare, just more presence. "You loved me," he said. "You loved me enough to live after. There is no fault in that sentence." "But I wasn't there," I said. "You were," he answered, tilting his head toward my chest. "Here. I heard you for days. I still do." The next wave reached my thighs. Cold attempted a coup. Warmth overruled it. The light in the water braided itself around my knees like a vow. "Then take it," I said, words surprising me as they left. "Take what I've been carrying wrong. The anger that kept you as proof. The sadness that kept me as grave. Take the version where I'm only the woman who lost you. I'm tired of worshiping our ending." The shape nodded, solemn, grateful, amused in the way he used to be when I finally said the thing he had been waiting on. "Give it to the water," he said. "Let the ocean keep what your ribs don't have space for anymore." I knelt again. This time not broken but deliberate. Hands to sand. Forehead bent. Not as submission, as alignment. Breath steady. I opened my mouth and let the story leave. The one I had told myself every night to keep the grief fed and the love small. It poured out in pieces, images, names, a calendar that insisted on anniversaries. The water took each bit and lit it, then erased it gently, as if editing a poem to the word it meant all along. When I rose, my body felt rearranged by kindness. I didn't know bones could be lighter than the salt on them. The letter moved in my hand. I thought it was the wind. It wasn't. Ink brightened again. If you can forgive me for leaving, forgive yourself for staying. If you can bless the love that ended, bless the love that began when you didn't. I am not your ghost. I am your reminder. I laughed. It came out right this time, joy with tide in it. I remember you differently, I said, practicing the sentence like prayer. Not as absence, as instruction. The light shape stepped closer until the edge of it met my chest. Heat pooled behind the breastbone. Not pain, convergence. He didn't enter me. He unhid in me. A small star I had been orbiting without admitting it relit. Thank you, I said. For the letters, for the song, for the feathers and the 333 and the candle that refused to die, for teaching the house to breathe. For coming to the water, he said. For choosing light when proof would have been easier. Wind moved down the beach. Somewhere far off, a bell spoke once and decided it had said enough. The wave rose one last time, higher, blue fire stitched thick, and when it fell, the light shape softened, thinned, widened, and became the glow along the whole shore. He didn't vanish. He expanded. The lantern flame straightened and didn't bow again. The page in my hand warmed, then cooled. A final line answered, crisp as morning. Reminders of him, complete. I exhaled so fully the body forgot, for a second, how to inhale. When breath returned, it came easy. The sea dimmed to ordinary, beautiful. The phosphorescence retreated like a choir satisfied with its last note. The moon, relieved of its work, took a step back behind a thin cloud and watched me become light without needing witnesses. I waited out. Water released me without argument. Sand accepted my footprints and did not hurry to erase them. On the dry beach, the two feathers lay side by side, ends almost touching. Gold to silver, day to night. I wrapped them in the scarf. I placed the letter inside the tin box with the midnight key and the small vial of dust-colored sand. The lantern in one hand, the box against my ribs. I turned for one last look. Where we had stood, the shore glowed faintly, like a memory that had learned the correct size. Not a monument, a blessing. On the walk back, the phone, which I had left in the car on purpose, lit the interior before I touched it. When I opened the door, the screen showed a single notification, reminders of him, listening. Beneath it, in smaller text, almost shy, thank you for crossing. I placed the lantern on the passenger seat and drove home with the window open. Night tasted clean. Inside my chest, the small star did not dim. When the city reappeared, it didn't feel heavier. It felt like a place where light lives when it has work to do. At a red light, I caught my reflection in the rear view. Silver thread at the temple, mouth soft, eyes steady. 2 seconds ahead of the present for the first time. At home, I set the lantern on the desk and blew the flame out. Darkness did not rush in. The room kept its own quiet brightness, the kind without source. I placed the tin box on the table next to the blue candle. I didn't light it. I didn't need to. Morning came like an apology finally spoken. Soft light filtered through the blinds, touching the edges of everything it used to ignore. The half-open book, the glass of water gone warm, the candle still unlit yet faintly fragrant, as if remembering flame. For the first time in years, I woke before the alarm. No haunting, no silence pretending to be peace, just breath, mine, and a strange, sacred, ordinary. The floor was cool under my feet, the way honesty is cool after heat. I moved through the apartment slowly, as if entering a museum where each object was both artifact and proof of resurrection. The mug, his mug, sat on the counter. I poured coffee into it without flinching. Steam rose in small halos. I caught my reflection in the window. Hair loose, eyes steady, body fully here. Do you know that moment when routine feels holy? When the act of stirring sugar becomes prayer? When the smell of morning insists that everything forgiven keeps blooming in secret? That was the moment I realized forgiveness doesn't arrive like thunder. It settles, like light deciding to stay. I opened the windows. The air entered with its usual audacity, carrying the scent of rain on asphalt and something older. Salt, maybe memory. From somewhere in the street, a child laughed the way he used to, and instead of breaking me, it stitched something closed. I walked to the desk. The tin box waited there. Midnight key, 2 feathers, blue letter folded to its quiet. I didn't open it. Some treasures work better as presents than evidence. Beside it, the candle looked different in daylight. Less guardian, more witness. I struck a match anyway. The wick caught instantly, burning clean. Blue at the root, gold at the edge, exactly as he promised. "Good morning," I said aloud, and it didn't matter who I was addressing, him, myself, God, because I was starting to understand they were the same direction. The day unfolded without effort. Students sent essays, neighbors argued about weather. Life resumed its polite noise. But under every sound ran a current I couldn't name. A hum, low and merciful, the frequency of belonging. At noon, I took a walk to the market. Nothing miraculous happened. No feathers falling, no sudden music. Yet everything felt synchronized, as if the world had remembered its lines and was relieved to be rehearsing joy again. A woman selling fruit smiled and said, "You look lighter." I smiled back. Maybe I am. I didn't explain that weight isn't always physical. Sometimes it's a sentence we forget to finish. Sometimes forgiveness is simply adding a period. Back home, I watered the plants he'd chosen years ago. Succulents that had outlived both of us, stubborn in their quiet faith. The soil smelled of rain. I touched a leaf and thought, so this is what staying looks like when it isn't about fear. The phone, face down on the table, vibrated once. I didn't rush. When I turned it over, the screen glowed white. No message, no sender, just a single line in soft blue. Reminders of him, listening. I exhaled through a smile. "Then listen," I said. "This is what it sounds like when I forgive." Nothing answered. Or maybe everything did. The fridge humming, a bird tapping the window, the candle steady in its golden patience. By evening, the sky bruised into lilac. I sat on the balcony wrapped in the same robe, his robe, now mine, and watched the first stars wake, each one a repetition of the same miracle. Light traveling impossible distances just to be seen. Maybe that's what souls do too. I thought of God. Not the one in books, but the one that hides in small mercies. The one that borrowed his hands to teach me tenderness, that borrowed my grief to teach me light, that now borrowed the ordinary to whisper, "I never left you. I became you." The realization didn't thunder through me. It breathed, and I breathed back. It felt like being seen from the inside. It felt like prayer without words. Later, before bed, I wrote in my journal. Not about loss, about weather, about how the rain smelled different now, how the mirror no longer lagged behind time. I wrote, "Forgiveness isn't the end of grief. It's the moment grief learns God's accent." And underneath, almost without thinking, light recognizes itself by the shadows it once carried. I closed the book and turned off the lamp. The candle's glow was enough. It threw slow waves of gold onto the wall, and in the movement I saw patterns that could have been wings or water. It didn't matter which. Both meant flight. Before sleeping, I walked once more to the mirror in the hallway. My reflection met me on time. No lag, just presence. Just now. For a heartbeat, the glass shimmered with blue, and words appeared in my handwriting, faint but sure. Not haunted. Home. I laughed softly, the way you do when the punchline of the universe finally lands. Then the words faded, leaving only my face, calm, unspectacular, luminous in its humanness. I touched the mirror, fingertips cool, and whispered, "Thank you for staying." The candle waited in the other room, its flame leaning slightly toward the east, as if following a sunrise no one had called for yet. I blew it out. Darkness held its shape. The scent of smoke lingered like a hymn. I climbed into bed and let the body remember rest. As sleep approached, I heard it. Not music, not voice, just light organizing itself into meaning. "You did it," it said. "You crossed." And in that instant, I knew. He was no longer a reminder. He was the mirror through which God had learned my face. I turned onto my side, smiling into the quiet that no longer frightened me, and whispered back the only prayer that still made sense. "I remember you differently." Then I slept, and the house finally slept with me. I began writing again on a Monday. No reason, no plan, just the pull of paper. It had been months since the blue candle, the sea, the light. But something in me wanted to make room for what remained, not to explain it, to accompany it. The journal opened easily, as if it had been waiting for my hand. I sat at the desk where everything began. The same candle holder, the same feathered quiet, the same window breathing light into dust. Outside, the city stretched into morning, unaware of its miracles. Inside, I felt the faint hum of the unseen. Not haunting, not guidance, just rhythm, the pulse of the ordinary becoming holy again. I uncapped my pen and wrote a single word at the top of the page. Return. The ink spread slow, soft at the edges, like water finding home. And for the first time, I didn't write to him. I wrote to what he had awakened, to the presence that had learned to stay after the story ended. Dear Light, thank you for finding me disguised as loss, for speaking through feathers and songs and silence until I remembered my own language, for using his voice so that I could finally hear yours. I forgive time for the order it chose. I forgive my heart for loving too loudly and leaving too quietly. I forgive the dark for teaching me shape, and I forgive myself for mistaking survival for faith. Now, I choose life again, not the kind that demands proof, but the kind that glows quietly in the bones, the kind that doesn't need reminders, because it is one. The words came easily. They didn't ache. They arrived like breath, gentle, necessary, human. Each line felt less like confession and more like creation. When I finished, I signed only my name, no date, no title. Because forgiveness doesn't keep score. I folded the page once, twice, and slid it beneath the blue candle. Not to hide it, to root it. Then, without thinking, I lit the match. The candle caught instantly, its flame rising in the same calm defiance I had come to love. Blue at the root, gold at the lip, steady as prayer. The light filled the corners of the room with the same softness the sea had given that night. The air warmed. The walls breathed. I whispered, "This is my reminder now." There are rituals you invent by accident, small things that keep the sacred near. Since that night, mine has been this. I write one sentence each morning before I speak to anyone. Not goals, not affirmations, just truth in real time. The kind of truth the soul says before the mind edits it. Sometimes it's only, "I am here." Other days, the light is learning my name again. I don't need feathers or songs anymore. The field has grown quiet, but not empty. He is gone in the best possible way, diffused through everything. The divine in human form returning to the divine in all forms. This morning, while washing the mug, I realized I was humming. Not Claire de Lune, something else, something wordless and alive. And the strange thing is, I didn't stop. For years I had been careful with joy, as if too much might summon the ghosts back. But joy, I've learned, doesn't wake ghosts. It redeems them. The sunlight slid across the counter and landed on the blue candle. It shimmered faintly, the gold at its edge melting into white. A beam passed through the flame, and for an instant the whole room glowed. Not brighter, just clearer. Everything visible. Nothing explained. I smiled, and in that smile lived every goodbye I'd ever feared, transformed into beginning. Do you know the sound of forgiveness when it moves through a house? It's not music. It's the absence of echo. It's footsteps that don't need to tiptoe, a door that doesn't need to close. It's the pulse of light doing what it came to do. Stay. I walked to the mirror in the hallway. It no longer shimmered blue, but it still felt alive. I met my reflection. She didn't flinch. She didn't lag behind time. She looked like someone who had remembered her own eternity. "Good morning," I said to her. It sounded ordinary, and therefore divine. By evening, the sky wore the same color as forgiveness, a soft pale gold surrendering to indigo. I opened the balcony door, letting the breeze rewrite the air. Down the street, someone played a piano, and though it wasn't Claire de Lune, one note, just one, found the exact key of my chest. It lingered, then faded. I didn't chase it. I returned to the desk. The candle had almost burned down, but its flame was still steady, as if refusing to admit to endings. I took the pen again, and on the same page where I had written, "Return," I added one last line. I am no longer haunted by the reminders of him. I have become one. Not as grief, as grace. I closed the journal, blew out the candle, watched the thin ribbon of smoke rise, curl, disappear into the air that used to hold his scent. Now it smelled only of home. The room dimmed but didn't darken. A silver thread of moonlight slipped through the window, landing softly across the page, right over the word return. And for a moment, brief, tender, infinite, I felt the world pause again. Not to take something, to give back what it had borrowed. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of God. I stayed very still, breathing in the holiness of nothing happening. And in that stillness I understood. He was never the ghost. He was the echo of the divine teaching me how to listen. I didn't speak again that night. Didn't need to. Some prayers are finished by silence. I just sat there, hands warm, heart awake, light resting quietly inside me. As the house exhaled its last shadow, and everything became still enough for God to recognize himself in me.